What if the fierce Vikings you know were born from something far darker? Imagine the ancient Nordic wilds, where thick fog rolls relentlessly over jagged fjords, and the cold air hangs heavy with secrets. Here, shadowy figures move silently early, Norse warriors preparing for battles not yet understood. Their faces flicker in the torchlight as they sharpen axes and tighten grips on worn shields. Each breath, visible in the chilling air, carries a whisper of something primal, something feared even by those who would become legends. This is not the Viking saga told in halls, but a story rooted in terror, mystery, and blood, an origin that has long been hidden beneath layers of time and myth. Tonight, we unravel the disturbing true origins of the first Vikings and what they hid from history. Beyond the popular tales of conquest and glory lies a darker truth, a shadowed past woven with ritual and fear. Ancient rune stones, half buried in moss, stand as silent witnesses to secrets waiting to be revealed. Flickering shadows dance across their surfaces, as if guarding the stories carved into stone. What has been buried for centuries is about to surface. Prepare to journey into the forgotten fears that shaped the Vikings and, perhaps, still haunt the north. A storm lashes against a desolate shoreline where the earth is scarred and raw. Cracked skulls and shattered bones lie half buried in mud, silent witnesses to battles long past. Seaweed clings to fractured remnants of human lives lost, while waves relentlessly crash against jagged rocks. The weight of history presses in here, quiet, grim, and unyielding. This is a shore marked by violence, where the past refuses to rest. Each fractured bone and weathered skull speaks of ancient conflict, forgotten by time but etched deep in the land itself. Through the dense, shadowed woods, Ragnhild moves with urgency, dragging her injured brother with desperate strength. Her breath rises in white clouds in the cold air, every step heavy with tension. Flickering shadows dance between twisted trees as unseen eyes watch their flight. Whispers thread through the darkness, barely audible but haunting voices of the unseen. Her brother's ragged gasp cuts through the silence. They're coming. Fear tightens its grip, and the forest itself seems to hold its breath, waiting. From the distance, battle cries pierce the night air, mingling with chilling howls that ride the wind. Shapes move swiftly in moonlit patches between trees, unseen but relentless in pursuit. The terror is not only physical but psychological. Hunters stalking its prey through shadow and sound. The chase presses onward, echoing through the woods as screams fade into darkness. In the shadows, fear becomes the hunter. Military drones sweep across vast landscapes, their sensors scanning every inch below with relentless precision. Surveillance screens flash red alerts, signaling unseen threats in a world obsessed with vigilance and control. Amid this high-tech environment, a soldier lies awake, trapped in nightmares that break through the night's silence. Sweat drenches his uniform as memories of conflict refuse to fade. Marking wounds invisible to the eye, the beeps of monitoring equipment mix with distant explosions, creating a soundscape of heightened anxiety. These are the invisible scars of modern warfare, psychological battles that rage long after the guns fall silent. This is a world where eyes in the sky watch constantly, yet fear persists in the mind. Statistics flash across the screen. Rising rates of PTSD, the inheritance of trauma across generations, and the lingering psychological effects of violence, passed down like a shadow. Family photographs dissolve into abstract strands of DNA, illustrating how ancestral pain weaves into the fabric of our being. The violence of our ancestors did not end with them. It echoes through time, shaping the lives and minds of those who come after. Trauma is not a series of isolated moments, but a continuum, one that connects past and present in complex, often unseen ways. The scene splits, juxtaposing two realities. On one side, Viking warriors charge through dense forests, axes raised and faces fierce, raw and brutal in their pursuit of survival. On the other, modern soldiers navigate urban war zones, filled with technology, drones overhead, and enemies hidden in shadows and data streams. Despite the gulf of centuries and technology, the tension is the same: fear, violence, and the primal drive to endure. The strategies may have evolved, but the core instincts remain unchanged. Survival demands vigilance, whether by torchlight or infrared. As the camera slowly zooms on ancient rune stones, half hidden by moss and flickering torchlight, a question lingers in the air. The violence of our ancestors haunts us still, but how did it begin? Tonight, we follow the shadows back to their source, tracing the rituals, fears, and forces that shaped the earliest stirrings of human conflict. What we uncover will challenge what we think we know about fear, violence, and legacy. The Vikings were not simply fierce warriors. They emerged from fractured, brutal tribes forged in darkness and terror. Their culture was deeply entwined with survival and psychological control. Far beyond the popular image of raiders and explorers, archaeological digs reveal skulls bearing signs of violent trauma, healed wounds, and evidence of ritual mutilation, while firelit ritual reenactments suggest ceremonies designed not only to honor gods, but to impose fear and maintain internal order. These were communities shaped by harsh environments and constant threat, where power was wielded through both physical force and psychological mastery. What we think we know about the Vikings is only the surface-polished myth, glossing over a darker, more complex reality rooted in power, pain, and survival. Unearthed evidence paints a chilling picture of their world. Bone pits and charred remains hint at rituals meant to instill terror, not just in enemies, but within the tribes themselves. These rites, often violent and secretive, used fear as a tool to bind the community and protect against outsiders. Modern DNA studies reveal ancestral trauma passed through generations, a biological imprint of violence and hardship that still echoes today. Meanwhile, faded runes and fragmented sagas suggest stories long silenced or twisted by time, hinting at a deeper mythology grounded in shadow and silence. These discoveries force us to reconsider Viking origins, revealing a culture where fear was wielded deliberately as a weapon and survival demanded psychological as well as physical. Tonight, prepare to confront a past more unsettling than you imagined. We will journey deep into forgotten rites and shadowed histories beneath the familiar Viking legend. Through archaeology, genetics, and ancient stories, we will uncover a culture built not only on battle but on terror, control, and resilience. This story challenges what we believe, inviting you to see the Vikings in a new and revealing light, one that shakes the foundations of myth and brings us closer to the truth of their dark beginnings. Mist curls low over a windswept peat bog at dawn, cloaking shallow pits in ghostly vapor. Archaeologists work carefully, fingers prying loose a ceremonial dagger encrusted with bog iron, its blade slick with ancient earth. This place holds secrets far older than longships carving through northern seas. The first Vikings emerged from shadows shaped by ice-aged migrations, harsh crucibles of violence and blood-soaked rites. These were not mere warriors. They were tribes forged in brutal survival and dark ritual. Their story precedes the saga born of frozen landscapes where life and death were inseparable, and power was carved with sharp edges in both flesh and spirit. Ancient DNA studies from burial mounds reveal a remarkable fusion of North Germanic and steppe nomad lineages. Haplogroups I1 and R1 are converging in the raw frontiers of Scandinavia. Animated strands of DNA spiral alongside maps tracing migration routes, illustrating how diverse peoples intermingled. Professor Anders Holm explains how these genetic threads underpin a cultural inheritance defined by mobility, resilience, and martial prowess. The Viking gene pool was far from isolated. It was a complex tapestry woven with bloodlines, famed for horseback riding and warfare. This fusion shaped identities long before Viking raids reshaped Europe. Isotope analysis of skeletal remains reveals childhoods spent migrating across rugged Scandinavian terrains from icy fjords to dense, shadowy forests. Maps layered with isotope markers show how these youths wore moccasins, worn thin by relentless travel through snow and mud. Their bodies carry chemical traces of shifting diets and environments, embedding restlessness and endurance deep within them. Growing up on the edge of survival, these children learned early that movement and vigilance were necessary. Their nomadic upbringing conditioned them for the harsh unpredictability of their world. Beneath the bog's murky surface lie sacral deposits, human remains deliberately offered to the gods. Some bodies are bound tightly, wrists and ankles marked by bindings, others bearing ritual scars. These were not mere casualties of battle, but sacred sacrifices. Close-ups reveal dark peat water dripping from bones, binding marks etched deep into wrists. Violence was sacred. Death was an offering. These ritual deposits intertwined brutality with belief, intended to secure protection, favor, or power through blood and devotion. Cut marks on skulls and bones tell a chilling story of ritual desecration, wounds, deliberate and symbolic, not accidental battle injuries. Bone fragments, examined under magnification, show precision cuts, edges stained with faint red ochre. This was a calculated act meant to break not only bodies, but spirits. Such desecration reflects a complex relationship with death, where violence served as communication between living and sacred forces, reinforcing control and fear within the community. The earliest runic inscriptions, etched on antler fragments, hinted charms invoked for strength, protection, and bloodlust. Hands carefully carve angular runes, illuminated by flickering torchlight, weaving language into bone. These words were not mere marks. They were weapons, magical tools designed to empower warriors and instill terror in foes. Runic writing merged the physical and mystical, binding community, belief, and power through language. Bronze Age arrowheads were repurposed as spear tips, symbolizing the continuity of violence through generations. Blacksmiths hammer molten metal in firelight, shaping arrowheads into deadly spear tips. This recycling represents a brutal legacy, where weaponry was sacred and passed down like treasured heirlooms. The act of reforging connects past to present, technology to terror, forging a culture inseparable from conflict. The late antique Little Ice Age devastated Scandinavia. Temperatures plunged, harvests failed, and famine spread. Stark landscapes lie blanketed in early snow. Starving livestock wander thin pastures. Desperate faces mark the toll. This harsh environment bred harsh hearts. Communities were driven to raiding as survival strategy, forced to strike out to endure. The Earth's cruelty shaped not only lives, but hardened spirits, pushing tribes toward violence, born of necessity. Scarcity bred a preemptive strike ethic. Communities learn to strike first and strike hard, adopting violence as a way of life rather than mere defense. Warriors prepare weapons in dimly lit halls, faces steeled with resolve. Dr. Freya Lundquist notes how violence was woven into birthright, an inseparable aspect of identity and survival. This strategic brutality ensured dominance and deterred threats in an unforgiving world. A clan leader, cloaked and painted, plunges a dagger into a bound captive in a ritual drenched in red ochre. The glow of torchlight illuminates painted faces, fierce and unyielding. The captive's silent scream is frozen in fear. This blood-stained rite marks a fusion of ritual and terror, a violent affirmation of power and loyalty within the tribe. A child's tear falls onto soggy earth, signaling initiation into the tribe of blades. Close up on the tear mixing with mud, flickering firelight reflects wide, fearful eyes. Born into a world where blades sang lullabies, this child is marked by violence and survival from the earliest days. Taught that strength and terror walk hand in hand, inside the turf-roofed hut, at twilight, animal pelts hang heavy on rough wooden walls, their worn textures absorbing flickering firelight. A shallow fire pit glows softly in the center, casting embers that pulse like a slow heartbeat. Smoke coils upward, twisting toward the low ceiling where wooden beams groan under the weight of earth and thatch. The air is thick with the scent of leather, smoke, and damp earth, a mixture both intimate and raw. This is more than shelter. It is a living space shaped by centuries of survival and ritual. Every surface tells a story of endurance, of people who carved meaning from harsh. The warmth from the fire offers reprieve, but the tension in the quiet remains a sacred energy that pulses beneath the flickering shadows. This is the world the first Vikings inhabited, both fierce and fragile. To know the first Vikings, we must step beyond legend and into a world shaped by hunger, fear, and sacred violence. Hunger is a constant companion, gnawing at bodies weakened by cold and hard labor. Fear is never far, lurking in shadows, in the howling wind outside, and in rival clans seeking dominance. Violence is not random but ritualized, a tool to bind the community and maintain order. Faces marked by fatigue and resolve move steadily, hands skilled from toil, but cautious as well. Every action is calculated, every breath held. This was survival carved from terror and tradition, way of life, where the physical and psychological were intertwined. Understanding their hunger and fear reveals the depth of their resilience and the sacredness they found in violence. Ragnhild steps onto frost-cracked earth, wrapped tightly in fermented hide that smells of smoke and sweat. Her breath rises in white clouds as early morning light paints long shadows across the frozen ground. She meets Egil, her mute brother, whose forehead bears a fresh, jagged scar from a recent initiation, a mark of belonging and pain. Together they carry ritual poles carved with wolf runes, symbols meant to protect their clan and spirit. The poles are heavy and rough, but sacred, placed carefully into the earth at the perimeter of their settlement. As the grey sky brightens, the silent vigil they keep is both a defense and a prayer, anchoring the clan in a dangerous world. This ritual meeting of day and night sets the tone for survival and spiritual strength. The ritual poles are more than wooden stakes. They are guardians standing watch between the living and unseen realms. Carved deeply with wolf runes, each groove is etched with meaning and power. Fingers trace the rough carvings, connecting flesh to spirit. These marks held more than wood, they held the clan's soul. The wolves symbolize strength, cunning, and protection, invoking ancestors and spirits to shield the community from rival clans and restless ghosts. The poles create a barrier against danger seen and unseen, embodying the fragile boundary between life and death. In this world, spiritual protection was as vital as physical defense, a fusion of belief and survival. The poles stand as silent sentinels, bearing witness to the clan's unwavering resolve. The clan moves quietly through dense forest and tundra, bows drawn taut and eyes sharp. Elk, their prized quarry, grazed cautiously as hunters blend into the shadows. Nearby, gatherers pluck lichens, mosses, and roots, both food and medicine from the earth. Every movement is measured and deliberate, steeped in whispered charms to honor the spirits of the prey and forest. These chants are soft but potent, passed down through generations as protection and thanks. The hunt is not only sustenance, but a sacred act connecting tribe to land and life. The rustle of bowstrings and soft footsteps mingle with the murmured prayers, creating a ritual rhythm. In this wilderness, survival depends on skill, respect, and reverence for forces both natural and supernatural. In the clay-floored smithy, weaponsmiths tend to bog iron furnaces, sparks flying with every hammer strike. The red-hot metal glows fiercely under skilled hands, shaping blades destined for battle and ritual alike. Each weapon is more than steel, it is imbued with prayers for strength, protection, and unstoppable force. The smith's breath clouds in the cold air as hammer meets anvil in a rhythmic beat, echoing the heartbeat of the clan. Forging is both craft and ceremony, a moment where fate is shaped with fire and will. These weapons carry the weight of destiny, binding warriors to their ancestors and to the harsh realities they face. Steel is their safeguard and their legacy. At the clan's gathering, the first pour of mead signals the sacred moment of oath. A minor wound, fresh and bleeding, is shared among the members' blood, mingling as a powerful symbol of unity and vengeance. Hands clasp tightly as Eldar the seer chants in Proto-Norse, weaving ancestral words that bind flesh and spirit. The air is thick with solemnity. Torchlight flickers against determined faces. This ceremony transforms individuals into a collective, pledging loyalty and shared fate. The blood and mead become a pact, an unbreakable vow etched into the tribe's identity. It is a bond forged in pain and purpose, where trust is sanctified by sacrifice and the promise of shared struggle. Eldar's chants rise slowly into the night, his voice a deep, steady thread weaving through the firelit circle. The ancient language carries weight beyond meaning. Each syllable summons ancestral power and binds the clan's identity. These words are not mere sounds, but a force that unites body and spirit, setting the stage for ritual violence and protection. Eldar's face is illuminated by firelight, his mouth moving with deliberate precision. His chants create a spiritual armor, connecting past and present, life and death. Through this verbal magic, the tribe shapes its fate and reinforces its cohesion. By bone and blade, they made themselves whole. The voice intones, underscoring the inseparability of word, action, and belief. As twilight deepens, clan members don masks fashioned from deerskull screeches that embody both predator and prey. These masks are heavy and raw, painted with earth pigments and worn as conduits for transformation. Moving in slow, deliberate procession around a circle of flickering torches, they reenact hunts that blur the lines between mortal and mythic. The ritual dissolves individuality, allowing participants to embody the spirits of the forest and the chase. Shadows stretch long as the dare-masked figures weave through the night, their movements both haunting and hypnotic. This rite is a passage into liminality, where boundaries fade and the tribe communes with forces beyond the visible world. It is a sacred dance of survival and identity. An enemy scout, captured and trembling, is led through the ring of torches, his figure a stark silhouette against the fiery glow. His cries rise and fall like distant drums, echoing through the still night air. Silent watchers in deer skull masks surround him, their presence both judge and jury. The ritual passage serves as a display of power, instilling fear and demonstrating dominance. The captive's terror becomes part of the ceremony, a raw reminder of the consequences of intrusion and betrayal. This procession is not only punishment but a vital assertion of the clan's control over their world. In this passage, the fragile balance between mercy and menace is laid bare, underscoring the tribe's mastery of terror as a tool for cohesion. Ragnhild's wide eyes reflect the flickering firelight as she watches the ritual unfold. Her fear is mixed with fascination, a complex emotion where terror transforms into belonging. The dark rite redefines community boundaries. Those who share in fear become united. This shared experience creates a powerful bond that transcends pain, forging trust and loyalty within the tribe. Terror is no longer merely a source of anxiety but a catalyst for unity and identity. As the captive's cries fade, Ragnhild senses the tribe's strength lies in their ability to channel fear into purpose. In this moment, she understands that fear itself is a form of belonging, an essential thread in the fabric of their survival. As embers die to glowing coals, the clan gathers for dreamcasting, a ritual where each member whispers a personal fear into a hollowed horn. These murmured confessions release anxiety to the spirits, cleansing the mind before rest. Eldar inhales deeply, breathing smoke from henbane and mugwort, herbs known to open the mind veil and invite ancestral visions. Faces illuminated by firelight grow serene as the ritual unfolds, blending human vulnerability with spiritual communion. The whispered fears become shared burdens, strengthening collective resilience. This sacred release marks the transition from waking struggle to the sanctuary of sleep. The night watch is both a protective vigil and a passage into dreamscapes, where the past and present merge. Sustaining the tribe's continuity, the acrid, penetrating scent of birch smoke fills the hut, swirling slowly toward the low ceiling beams. Its sharp, earthy aroma cleanses both air and spirit, acting as a natural sedative and antiseptic. Clan members shield their faces gently from the smoke sting, breathing in its calming properties. The smoke's presence is more than practical, it is symbolic, a ritual purification that prepares body and mind for rest and renewal. The scent weaves through the night, binding participants to their environment and each other. It lingers in clothes, hair, and memory, a reminder of the forest's power and protection. In this ancient setting, the air itself becomes medicine, nurturing the clan through the darkness and into the promise of a new day. The creak of leather straps echoes softly as ceremonial garb is secured for night rites. Each piece is worn with intention, the weight of hides, the firmness of buckles, a tactile reminder that every movement carries meaning. Masks are fastened with care, their weight pressing down with the gravity of tradition. Hands skilled from daily toil move slowly, reverently, recognizing the power embedded in worn materials. The physicality of ritual grounds participants, connecting body and spirit. Leather, scarred and softened by use, embodies continuity, heritage, and readiness for both ceremony and conflict. In the quiet rustle of straps and shifting gear, the clan prepares not just to face the night, but to enter a shared space of transformation and belonging. Deep, resonant drum beats pulse steadily through the night, syncing with the rising and falling heartbeats of the clan. Chests rise and fall in slow motion, hands grip weapons and ritual objects with tightening resolve. The rhythm binds participants physically and spiritually, creating a shared tempo that grounds the tribe in collective strength. The drums echo ancient patterns, calling forth ancestral power and focus. This steady beat becomes a pulse of unity, transforming individual fear into group resolve. It marks time in a world without clocks and shapes, experience beyond words. The body's response to sound connects flesh to spirit, turning the night's rites into a living, breathing ceremony of survival and identity. In the hut's flickering firelight, Ragnhild traces a fresh scar on Egil's arm with suture dark, deliberate mark symbolizing survival, shared pain, and unbreakable oath. The scar is both wound and seal, binding them in a covenant that transcends words. Faces around the fire reflect solemn determination, each marked by their own battles and sacrifices. This scar becomes a testament to resilience and loyalty, a visible sign of belonging to the tribe's enduring legacy. As soot-darkened fingers move slowly, the firelight flickers against skin, casting shadows that dance like spirits. In blood and shadow, they live on. This mark will hold until dawn, a silent promise woven into flesh and soul. A carved stone stands solemnly against the dying light of Dusker. Fierce, wolf-headed warrior, eyes hollow and unyielding. Around it, children circle slowly, their shadows stretching and merging with the jagged outlines of the monument. This image is more than stone. It anchors the identity of a clan built on ferocity, survival, and the ever-present force of fear. The wolf embodies the tribe's spirit. Wild, untamed, and relentless, these children grow up steeped in this symbol, learning that strength comes not only from muscle but from mastering terror itself. They don't just wield axes, they weave fear into the very fabric of their folklore, shaping who they are and who they must become in a world where only the strong and cunning survive. Central to their culture are oral tales passed from elder to youth, stories of a primal chieftain who, in the face of devastating famine, cursed the gods themselves, invoking divine wrath upon the land. These myths are more than entertainment. They function as psychodrama, dramatizing trauma and survival. Leadership is framed as born from suffering and sacrifice. Pain becomes a necessary trial that legitimizes authority. The narratives teach that to lead is to endure hardship and confront cosmic forces. Flames flicker on cave walls as these stories are retold, embedding deep lessons within the clan's collective memory. Myth is initiation, a ritualized pathway where anguish transforms into power and identity is forged in the crucible of cosmic struggle. Initiation rites were harsh and unyielding, centered on enduring physical and psychological pain as a necessary path to adulthood and leadership. Young warriors bore ritual scars, wounds etched with significance rather than cruelty. Pain was not punishment, it was transformation, a rite of passage that claimed place and power within the tribe. These marks bound the individual to ancestral lineage and communal responsibility. Firelight glints off drying scars as youths silently accept their trials, knowing that suffering is both their proving ground and their inheritance. Through pain, they claim their place not just among the living but within the spiritual fabric of their people. This passage through anguish was essential, preparing them for the brutal realities of tribal existence. Among the tribe, communal blood nights were held, ceremonies where elders openly recounted personal horrors and battles faced, exposing their wounds, both visible and hidden. These gatherings served to inoculate the young against fear's corrosive power by making trauma communal, shared, and thus contained. The flickering firelight illuminates weathered faces as youths listen with wide eyes, absorbing lessons of survival woven through tales of pain and loss. Anthropologist Dr. Sigrun Sturgard notes that this collective recounting functioned as a form of emotional preparation, binding the tribe together through shared vulnerability By facing dread aloud and collectively, the clan turned individual trauma into communal resilience, ensuring no one carried fear alone. Trauma was ritualized, transformed into strength. Group drumming was central to transforming personal anxiety into collective strength. Hands strike drums in rhythmic unison, heartbeats synchronizing with the pounding beat, creating a shared physical and emotional experience. The deep, resonant sound fills the night, enveloping participants in a trance-like state that converts isolated fear into manageable, communal energy. The drum's pulse becomes both weapon and healer, a means to conquer internal chaos through outward rhythm. This ritual converts individual tension into social cohesion, grounding the tribe in a unified purpose. The pounding echoes ancestral connections, reinforcing belonging. Anxiety, once a private torment, becomes a shared rhythm, a collective breath that steadies minds and steels bodies for the challenges ahead. The tribe's sense of identity was sharply defined through the process of other. Neighboring tribes were labeled dark and inhuman foes, whose flesh was taboo and whose defeat was considered a cosmic duty. These outsiders were portrayed as monstrous threats to both physical safety and spiritual order. Violence against them was not mere survival but an enactment of sacred justice, maintaining balance between worlds. Faces painted in shadow and anger blur as silhouettes of enemy camps appear across misty valleys. This othering forged a clear boundary between us and them, transforming fear of the unknown into fierce unity. In casting enemies as dark and alien, the clan built social cohesion and justified acts of brutal defense and aggression. Dr. Sigrun Sturgard explains how the externalization of fear onto the other served a critical social function. It tightened internal bonds and reinforced tribal unity. By projecting dread onto outsiders, the clan transformed diffuse anxiety into a focused force, binding members together through shared purpose and mutual vigilance. Tribal council scenes unfold, with faces set in resolute determination, the tension of shared fear palpable. This mechanism of fear projection became a tool of cohesion. By identifying a common enemy, the tribe created a stronger internal identity. Fear was deliberately harnessed as a means to unify, organize, and motivate. In this way, terror was not only a survival mechanism, but a social glue that held the clan together in the face of uncertainty. Neuropsychologist Dr. Marcus Vale draws parallels between Viking trauma rituals and modern exposure therapies. While contemporary methods seek to gradually reintroduce patients to trauma triggers to build resilience, Viking rituals weaponized this process at a communal scale. Repeated exposure to personal and collective fears through storytelling, drumming, and ceremonial confrontation transformed dread into strength. The rituals allowed members to face anxiety directly within a controlled, supportive environment. This communal exposure therapy reinforced psychological resilience, preventing trauma from fracturing the psyche. Dr. Vale notes, they weaponized fear and healed with it. This ancient practice anticipated modern approaches to trauma treatment, albeit framed within myth and ritual rather than clinical diagnosis. Today, PTSD and trauma are typically treated in isolation within clinical settings. Individuals confront memories privately, separated from social context. In contrast, Viking communities approach trauma as a shared, controlled experience. Firelit gatherings, ritualized storytelling, and collective ceremonies allowed trauma to be openly expressed, acknowledged, and contained. This communal approach provided social support and normalized emotional processing. A split screen contrasts a sterile therapy room with a firelit tribal circle, one clinical and private, the other communal and ritualistic. This reflective contrast reveals how trauma's integration differs. Isolation risks fragmentation, while ritualized sharing strengthens communal and individual resilience. Viking practices illustrate the power of collective healing in a pre-modern world. Fear, when ritualized and shared, became a foundation of mental strength within the tribe. The slow zoom on intertwined hands around a glowing fire shows faces, calm in shadow, united by sacred rites. Unlike isolated terror, shared fear bound individuals together, creating a psyche unbroken by dread. This communal architecture of emotion provided stability. Fear was no longer chaos, but a known and managed force. The tribe understood that unshared fear could fracture the mind, but when woven into ceremony and story, it fortified identity and resilience. They forged a psyche unbroken by fear so long as it remained sacred and shared. The narration concludes, emphasizing the transformative power of collective ritual in the face of existential threats. The ancient Viking approach to fear and trauma still echoes today, inviting reflection on how identity and community are shaped by shared emotional experience. Modern group meditation scenes dissolve into flickering ancient fire circles, highlighting continuity across millennia. This legacy challenges us to reconsider fear not as weakness, but as foundation and ancestral tool for survival and social cohesion. Their fear was deliberate, communal, and empowering, offering lessons in resilience that transcend time. The enduring question is how we might reclaim such sacred fear in our fragmented, isolated modern lives. Their fear was not weakness, it was foundation, the narration affirms. Closing this chapter with a call to honor the deep psychological wisdom encoded in ancient ritual. Runic amulets glint softly by firelight, their carved symbols ancient and deliberate. Nearby, a chieftain's sword rests on a fur-lined bench, its blade etched deeply with blood-rune symbols believed to invoke protection and victory. Beyond their physical form, these weapons held a subtler power, a psychological grip woven through symbols and belief. The Vikings understood the war was fought, not only with steel, but with the mind. Each rune was a conduit for divine favor and a message of intimidation to enemies. These carvings transformed tools of violence into instruments of psychological warfare. Beneath the steel lay subtler weapons, the narration reveals, inviting us to see Viking power as a complex blend of physical and mental domination. Viking blades often bore victory runes, carefully carved to channel the favor of war gods, believed to grant supernatural strength and protection. These runes glowed faintly in torchlight, linking the wielder to forces beyond the mortal realm. Alongside these were secret but intricate symbols etched on captives' bodies or ritual objects designed to suppress will and enforce submission. Archaeologists have uncovered bog bodies, marked with such runes, revealing a belief system that weaponized writing itself. Historian Dr. Ingrid Torvald explains how these markings acted as psychological bonds, controlling minds as effectively as chains. The power of runes lay in their secrecy and symbolism, turning words into weapons, binding captives, not just physically, but spiritually. The Vikings harnessed the potent effects of herbs like henbane and fly-agaric mushrooms to enter trance states. Smoke from these plants curled through longhouses during rituals, inducing visions that leaders believed were messages from the gods. These altered states were not recreational but tactical, used to inspire warriors and guide raids with perceived divine insight. The intoxicating qualities of these herbs opened a gateway to a liminal space where the physical and spiritual worlds merged. The narration reflects. They harnessed the forest's deepest secrets, revealing a culture that blended natural pharmacology with strategy. These substances became tools of power, deepening belief and fortifying psychological dominance in both leaders and followers. Honeymead was more than a drink, it was a sacred elixir, often blended with poppy husks to create agony-inducing feasts that tested endurance and spiritual connection. These communal gatherings were intense, combining intoxication with ritual to heighten emotional states and foster unity. Warriors drank deeply from horn cups, amber liquid glowing in the firelight, fueling both body and mind. The potent brew blurred boundaries between pain and ecstasy, enhancing resilience and courage before battle. These feasts were carefully controlled, designed to break down inhibitions and summon ancestral power. The mood was both intoxicating and solemn, a communal experience, blending madness and meaning, cementing loyalty through shared transcendence. Whalebone horns, carved with care, produced deep subsonic frequencies that could unsettle and disorient approaching enemies. These sounds were designed not only to be heard, but physically felt, resonating through the ground and body to disrupt balance and morale. War cries, synchronized and layered, formed psychoacoustic patterns that further broke the enemy's resolve. The warriors wielded sound as a weapon, blending natural materials and human vocal power to create an overwhelming sensory assault. These sonic tactics blurred the line between physical battle and psychological warfare, amplifying fear through vibration and rhythm. The deep, haunting drone underscored an ancient understanding that war was as much a battle of minds as of bodies. Inside the longhouse, architectural design amplified leaders' voices into thunderous commands, filling the space with overwhelming presence. High ceilings and curved timber beams directed sound waves, making chants and proclamations reverberate with a supernatural power. This acoustic engineering ensured that rituals unfolded with maximal psychological impact. Cognitive scientist Dr. Navin Patel notes that such sensory manipulation anticipates modern propaganda, using sound to control thought and will. The immersive soundscape disorients and captivates, placing participants in a shared psychological state. Leaders' voices dominated the space, reinforcing authority and unity through sonic force. This deliberate crafting of auditory experience reveals how the Vikings weaponized environment itself, transforming space into an instrument of power and control. The longhouse was more than shelter. It was a carefully engineered tool of power. Its layout channeled heat and sound to serve ritual purposes, concentrating warmth near key figures and carrying voices clearly across the space. This architectural design controlled atmosphere, guiding participants' focus and emotions. Every corner was planned to maximize psychological effects of moss and layered hides, muffled unwanted noise while amplifying ceremonial sounds. Diagrams reveal how spatial arrangements supported leadership, ensuring commands reached all with clarity and gravity. This spatial control was a form of biopolitics, manipulating environment to sustain social order. The voiceover concludes, "Every corner was engineered for control," underscoring the intimate link between built space and psychological dominance. Historian Dr. Ingrid Torvald reflects on the Vikings' mastery of what modern scholars call biopolitics, engineering belief and will with as much skill as wielding swords. Ritual, space, sound, and substance were tools for shaping minds, creating a cohesive social order built on shared myth and fear. Faces enraptured by firelight reflect a collective trance, where leadership and loyalty are forged. This psychological craftsmanship allowed leaders to command not just bodies, but belief itself, weaving myth into everyday life to sustain power. The mood is one of quiet awe, recognizing how intentional and sophisticated these practices were. This was control that transcended force, embedding power deep within the psyche of the tribe. Cognitive scientist Dr. Navin Patel draws compelling parallels between ancient Viking sensory tactics and modern propaganda and psychological operations. Both use repetition, sensory overload, and emotional manipulation to shape thought and behavior. Overlaying footage of tribal rituals with modern media imagery reveals a continuity in methods. Controlling information, sound, and environment to influence minds, these ancient strategies anticipated the power of sensory manipulation long before the term existed. The voiceover emphasizes they anticipated the power of sensory manipulation, linking past and present in a lineage of psychological control. This connection invites reflection on how technology and ritual both serve to dominate perception and sustain power structures across ages. A captive marches into dawn, eyes glazed and distant, his mind fractured before his body ever bleeds. Ritual sensory assault, the combination of sound, smoke, and symbolic violence breaks his will long before weapons are drawn. This psychological fracturing ensures submission without physical harm, a chilling testament to the power of engineered belief. The slow procession toward sunlight is heavy with silent defeat, his glazed eyes reflecting the weight of spiritual and mental conquest. The narration underscores the haunting reality. Controlling the mind was the foremost battlefield. Before steel touched skin, victory was secured through fear and ritual, shaping enemies into shadows of themselves. Viking power extended far beyond the edge of swords and spears. It was a mastery of mind and ritual, forging legends that outlasted mere metal. The camera slowly pans over runic carvings, weapons resting in ritual spaces, and focused faces enmeshed in ceremony. Their might was in weaving belief, fear, and myth into an unbreakable fabric of control. Every rune, chant, and intoxicant was a tool to shape reality and command loyalty. This fusion of tangible and intangible weapons created a force both physical and psychological. The narration closes with clarity. Their might was in the mind and the myth, revealing that true power lay in the unseen realms of belief and control. Museum halls hold Viking helmets behind glass, silent and cold remnants of a brutal past. Nearby, neon lights illuminate gamers reenacting raids in virtual reality, their faces alight with excitement and immersion. Popular culture has shaped a sanitized image of Vikings focusing on glory, heroism, and epic sagas while erasing the underlying terror and violence that defined their origins. This romanticized veneer comforts modern audiences, but obscures the raw realities of Viking life. The contrast between these sterile relics and vivid digital reenactments highlights how history is repackaged. We've sanitized their story, forgot the terror beneath. The narration warns, inviting reflection on the gap between myth and reality. Emerging epigenetic research reveals that trauma leaves biological marks passed down through generations. DNA strands intertwine with images of ancient battlefields and modern faces, suggesting that the fears and stresses endured by early Vikings may echo in us today. This inherited trauma might explain our fascination with violence and survival, as if the shadows of ancestral fear linger in our genetic code. Scientists explore how the wounds of history extend beyond memory into biology itself, connecting past and present. Experts consider whether our collective psyche carries these echoes on, invisible legacies shaping behavior and identity. Trauma is not confined to the past. The narration emphasizes it resonates across time, binding us to our forebears' fears. Modern veterans turn to communal rituals, reminiscent of ancient practices for healing trauma. Sweat lodges, group storytelling, and shared ceremonies create safe spaces to process pain collectively. Around crackling fires, these gatherings echo Viking rites where emotional wounds were acknowledged openly, transforming fear into strength through ritual and community. Slow, intentional breaths synchronize the group's energy, fostering connection and resilience. This parallel highlights how ancient methods of trauma, inoculation, and catharsis persist in contemporary healing practices. The narrative reveals that while times change, the fundamental need for collective support remains. These rituals, it notes, forge bonds that mend what isolation breaks, reminding us that healing is a shared journey. Viking cosplay conventions, binge-watching of Valhalla, and the pulsing energy of metal concerts celebrate a heroic Viking image, yet often obscure the darker truths. Fans don elaborate costumes and immerse themselves in dramatized tales of conquest and honor, embracing a mythologized identity divorced from archaeological realities. This noble, savage narrative glosses over brutality, slavery, and ritual violence, packaging Vikings as romantic, and the mask of pop culture simplifies complex history into digestible spectacle, shaping perceptions through entertainment rather than truth. The noble, savage myth masks harsher truths. The narration cautions, urging viewers to look beyond the spectacle and consider the full depth of Viking legacy. In recent years, extremist groups have co-opted Viking symbols, twisting ancient runes and imagery to legitimize violence and ideology. These groups mirror the Vikings' historical use of bind runes, secret symbols meant to coerce belief and submission, adapting them into digital echo chambers where propaganda circulates unchecked. Symbol-laden rallies showcase distorted heritage, weaponizing myth to rally support and justify aggression. Expert commentary explains how these symbols carry potent psychological power, shaping identity and belief through repetition and ritualized display. This modern appropriation underscores the enduring potency of Viking iconography, transforming it from cultural artifact into a tool of division and control. The myth is weaponized. Once more, warns the narration, its ancient power harnessed for contemporary conflict. While we cannot undo the horrors woven into Viking history, there is profound potential in reclaiming their rituals, transforming tools once used for terror. Ceremonies of healing and community. Flames burn gently in quiet circles where hands join in unity, symbolizing a conscious shift from violence to solidarity. This reimagining honors ancestral practices while redirecting their energy toward restoration. The narrative encourages embracing rituals that foster connection rather than fear, asserting that cultural memory can evolve beyond trauma. We can transform tools of terror into ceremonies of healing. It affirms, inviting viewers to participate in crafting a future grounded in resilience and compassion. This shift offers a path from shadowed pasts to renewed collective strength. Shared storytelling and rhythmic group drumming have become vital practices in contemporary mental health, echoing ancient communal healing. Around campfires, friends and strangers alike share fears and laughter, creating spaces where vulnerability is met with support. These gatherings build solidarity, enabling trauma to be processed collectively rather than suffered alone. The act of synchronizing breath and sound fosters emotional regulation, reconnecting participants with a sense of belonging. This communal practice reflects timeless human needs for connection and understanding, reaffirming that healing is social as much as personal. The narration highlights warmth and connection as foundational, bridging the past's collective rituals with present-day wellness strategies, underscoring the enduring power of community in sustaining mental health. Our environment, its sounds, symbols, and spacey shapes the inner world more profoundly than we often realize. Mindfulness of these elements invites intentional cultivation of rituals that nurture rather than harm. Close-ups show hands tracing meaningful symbols while ambient natural sounds wash over quiet scenes. By choosing what surrounds us, we influence emotional states and thought patterns. The narrative encourages viewers to reclaim agency over sensory input, crafting spaces of calm and meaning. Our environment shapes our inner world, it states, underscoring that ancient practices of ritual and symbolism remain relevant tools for psychological well-being today. Awareness and intention can transform daily surroundings into sanctuaries of resilience. Returning to narrative threads, Ragnhild smiles softly as she tells her brother Egil, a new legend, one not steeped in fear or vengeance, but in healing and hope. The flickering firelight illuminates their faces, laughter mingling with the night sounds outside the hut. This gentle storytelling marks a conscious break from cycles of terror, passing down narratives that nurture rather than wound. The scene embodies renewal, a reclaiming of cultural memory through kindness and care. The narration conveys a mood of hopeful renewal, inviting viewers to consider how stories shape identity and can be transformed. Ragnhild's tale is a beacon, guiding away from shadows toward light and restoration. The closing scene unfolds around a modern campfire, where a diverse circle of friends gathers, sharing fears and laughter in equal measure. Faces glow softly in the firelight, hands reach inward in solidarity, embodying the reclaimed power of ritual and community. This circle, echoing ancient gatherings, symbolizes a conscious choice to build connection and resilience from shadowed pasts. The narration affirms, "From shadowed pasts, we build brighter futures." This moment underscores that while history's darkness cannot be erased, its lessons can inspire transformation through communal acts of storytelling, ritual, and presence. The legacy of the Vikings is reimagined, no longer a tale of terror, but a foundation for hope, healing, and human unity. Return to the shoreline, where once the storm raged fiercely. Now a tranquil stillness has settled over the land. Waves lap gently at the sand, rhythmically caressing the earth beneath a soft, rising dawn. A single piece of driftwood, etched with ancient runes, stands upright as silent sentinel, holding watch over centuries of forgotten stories. From the depths of peat and mud, bog-buried bones have long whispered of lives shaped by terror and survival. Yet, beyond these relics, living hearts beat on, descendants of those first Vikings who were born from fear, bound by blood, and immortalized through myth. The landscape itself breathes memory, holding space for both the darkness of the past and the possibility of peace ahead. In a quiet, grassy knoll nearby, Ragnhild carefully lowers a ceremonial dagger into the earth, a gesture heavy with meaning. This act is not one of conquest, but of offering no symbolic, laying to rest of pain and violence. The soil accepts this piece, holding the weight of history with gentle dignity. Moments later, a young woman, a modern historian and descendant, approaches this very spot. She turns off her phone, kneeling slowly, hands pressing into the cool ground. Her eyes close in reverent silence. A bridge stretching across time, connecting bloodlines, memories, and healing. In this shared moment, the past and present intertwine, inviting reflection on the legacies we inherit and shape. Their origins were forged in shadow and strife, but their story is not fixed by darkness alone. Each of us carries the choice to inherit fear or to embrace understanding, to perpetuate violence or to foster remembrance. This invitation reaches across generations, urging us to look deeply within our own histories. What shadows lie buried beneath your feet? What light do you choose to kindle in the darkness? As dawn's first rays illuminate the rune-carved driftwood, past and present merge into one breath, reminding us that history is not only what we remember, but what we decide to carry forward.